Hey friends, okay, let's go over this full moon. And it's a pretty active, obviously, because we have an eclipse, so the nodes of the moon are, activated. Basically just means the full moon lands on top of the nodes of the moon. That's when you have an eclipse. So, as I was mentioning before, the moon, when you think about what the transiting moon represents, this is tied to our daily experience of human the human condition. So your moon it does kind of show the general collective mood that we're all kind of experiencing. And of course, this is the full moon for everybody. So some people can be highly triggered by transits, such as, an intense eclipse. And other people, I've noticed in particular, you may not, let's say this eclipse lands right directly, same degree as something in your birth chart, okay? Whether it's sun, moon, or an angle, something important, or Venus or Mars or what have you. But what happens, I feel like, with eclipses is it's not an immediate sort of event necessarily. It kind of will show, especially if it's right on top of planets, something new that you are working on or something that you're finally ready to let go of, okay? And full moons to me have a quality of, you always want to pay more attention to the moon because she's moved herself into position where she's opposing the sun. And in a sense, she's kind of overshadowing the sun. I mean, she's not, because I can see the sun's out right now, right? She's on the opposite side of the earth right now, the skies anyway. But with the full moon, it is as though the female mother principle, that nurturing, emotional place that we all started from, which was unconscious, our infancy, our fears about being abandoned, but from that very unconscious place that was formed as an infant, that's the moon. And so the moon does bring out in us raw, unconscious emotional material. And a lot of times we may not exactly know why. All right. Okay, so we talk a little bit more about this actual moon in particular. In the tropical, we have a Capricorn moon, right? So those of you who practice astrology, the moon rules, the moon is the ruler of Cancer, okay? Cancer and Capricorn are opposite archetypes. If you look at the wheel, Cancer's at the very bottom. And if you were born, if this is a birth chart, you would have been born up on top of, wherever the MC comes and lands in the middle of the chart. That's like the location you were at when you were born. And so it has to do with, even if it was nighttime, the heavens above you, that which was visible, that which was conscious, that which you could see. And there's something about everything, on the other side of the earth that you can't see with your naked eye, but you can imagine. You have to kind of go inside of yourself to imagine the first through the sixth houses. So, point being, when we have a full moon, it's always, right as the sun sets, the moon rises, because they're opposite each other in the sky. And so then you have the moon up in the sky all night until the sun rises again the next day. So with a Capricorn moon, though, the moon is in a placement that's its least strong, natural place to be. Capricorn is about creating structure and order in the outer world through reflecting to the past, thinking through traditions, looking at traditions, and how did the people who did this before decide what was the most efficient, best way to solve this problem, right? Or create this government, or run this business, or anything that has to do with structure, order, laws, creating, civilization in the outer world, and finding and creating order so that we don't just have mob rule or anarchy, okay? So when the moon, the sign that has to do with a realm that you really don't have control over, which is your emotions, when the moon's in Capricorn, it can feel like a time where either, now, depending upon if you've got lots of earth in your chart, then this moon could feel good. It's like, I'm getting shit done, or I'm done with that from my past. I'm no longer putting up with that bullshit. I'm starting over, and I'm, perhaps wanting to either take some time off from this job, from deciding what I want to major in, from this relationship, etc. Okay, very good time to just pump the brakes, take the month to reflect. I've been telling everybody that July is a month, it's the pivotal month of the year. Okay, it's the one that, and in fact, a lot of people, this first half of the year went by really fast, it seems like, and a lot of people started the year out gung-ho with projects and ideas that they were really excited to get launched, or relationships, or, etc. Very kind of hopeful for the year. We had, Jupiter and Sagittarius forming a nice little square to Neptune, so we were all a little bit in our dreams and our vision boards. And then you had the Mercury retrograde in March, and there've just been a few other things up until now. And this year has been one where it's a lot of starting one step forward, or how to hit 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a thing, right? So right now, not the time to kind of start something new per se. In fact, it's funny, I ended up having to move and was thinking I'd be moving at the end of July, ended up moving at the end of June instead, just like a month earlier, and I'm staying at a friend's house for a couple of weeks while the place we're moving into gets prepared. And so I was hoping to not move in July, right? But sometimes there's things that pop up that you don't have control over. And mine kind of all happened, just sort of all happened right as Mercury was moving, was in his shadow. So, okay, with this full moon, the house is going to affect you personally. So there's a couple of ways that you can look at this. There's like 3 simple ways. First of all, pull up the chart itself. Just look at the chart. I have it set for in Utah Mountain Time. It's set with a 3:38 p.m. time, and it's July 16th, of course, 2019 chart. If you're in California, set it for 2:38. And if you're in New York or whatever, East Coast, then you're going to set it for 5:38. Okay. So when you have the moon in this sign that is about restriction, creating order, being afraid of being seen as too emotional, okay? This feels like a full moon that is very much about discipline, maturity, reflecting on what at the beginning of this year, whatever my goals may have been, what was a pattern that I sort of initiated that caused me to not accomplish what it was I was hoping to accomplish. This isn't going to be the case for all of you. There's plenty of you who are like high achievers and just kicked ass this first half of the year, which is awesome. But the fact that we have Neptune and Jupiter squaring each other in signs that they both naturally rule, we are dealing with like the parts of us that naively can sort of dream these big dreams, and with the Neptune influence, we can even have this sort of sense of I need meaning, I need purpose with what it is I'm doing. We can feel really dissatisfied at work or in our relationships if we are walking a path that we originally chose half-heartedly. Okay, so I feel like with the moon being so close to Pluto, well, it hit Pluto. It's already happened earlier today, a few hours ago, but hit Pluto and then moved 3 degrees. So 6 hours later would have been at its resting place, and I feel like it's where in our past incarnational material do we have, what does your relationship to Saturn look like? Okay, so pull up your chart, your birth chart. Where's your Saturn at? Saturn shows where you've got, it's like in past incarnations, you may have had to have a lot of discipline in that area. You may have had things happen to you, reality, shit happens, right? Where you just had to be the grown-up or the responsible party, or you had to be the one who, hey, I'm putting on my big girl panties now, But not all of us have, like my Saturn's in my 12th house, and it's because I believe I've lived a lot of lives where I've had to be last man standing, the responsible one, the one that was like kind of grumpy, I think also. And in this life, my soul is sort of like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I need to do this from a different perspective, a different place. So anyway, look at your Saturn, my Saturn is in the 12th, and so for me, that's very much this kind of, sorry, someone's texting, very much has to do with, even in this life, it sometimes being hard for me to activate my Saturn. It's hard for me to just make myself do something if I'm not excited about it. I have to feel passionately involved, or I have to emotionally have kind of a trigger to get started. And Saturn, on the other hand, doesn't care about that, right? So where's your Saturn, right? Where is this moon landing in your birth chart, too? So in the Utah chart, for example, it happened in the middle of the afternoon. It was like in the third house. So on the other side of the earth, it was moved into its exact opposition, and perhaps has to do with conversation. I feel like here in Utah, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to say something or have a dialogue, especially with romantic partners, okay? They're going to feel this, I need to do this thing, but I'm also waiting for this other person. A lot of like the Two of Swords, the standstill stuff, I'm feeling, especially because just the fact that it's an eclipse, it is on South Node, which has to do, like, as I said, past incarnational material that's emotional trauma tied to death, fate, karma, stuff you had to go through, you didn't have control over. You were alive during a measles outbreak, and you got measles, and then you were scarred for the rest of your life. Like stuff that you couldn't control. And so to me, I feel like when Pluto's conjunct South Node and the moon is there, it's familial, family stuff. Family stuff as it relates to the father, the husband, the authority figure, the man. How, when you grew up and you were sad, happy, excited, hyper, whatever emotion, right, as a little kid, how did the adults in your life respond to that? Did they mirror it? Did they play with you? Did they judge it? Did they tell you to cut it out? Children are to be seen and not heard, etc. Because that's kind of the stuff we're looking at right now. What's your really deep, buried, what are the patterns you have that come from your childhood where you do them over and over and you're like, why the hell do I keep doing this? I keep like sabotaging myself. Why am I doing this? And I've learned the why question, which I always ask myself, why am I doing this? I'm so much smarter than this. Like, why do I? To me, this feels like a time where people have made some decisions in the last 3 weeks that perhaps now they're getting placed into a new kind of, feels kind of like we're on train tracks that are about to sort of split and go in two or maybe more directions. And so a lot of the decisions right now are totally tied to the patterns you know about yourself that you let yourself continue to kind of fall into. So discipline is big, and willpower, being able to discipline your willpower, being able to give yourself a reward when you're done working on something. But in particular this month, remember, retrogrades are always, you're kind of going to the past, you're reviewing things, you're sort of taking a little break even, taking a little rest. Not a great month to get anything new started or off the ground per se, especially with Mercury retrograde in there as well. I mean, I wouldn't do anything important during the month of July. I've had a few people that are getting married this month, and I was just kind of, oh, please just don't. Just wait another month. It's just like a really intense month, but maybe there's people who are marrying someone they've married in the past incarnation, and they still have work they've got to get done, and they need to get married under these conditions, So anyway, my thought on forecasting is astrology isn't necessarily here to be manipulated, I just want to kind of know what's coming so I know what it is I'm supposed to be learning and focusing on. Okay, so hopefully it's the same for you. Now, if you're wanting as well to get a better feel for the deeper story here, and this is not a literal chart, okay, this is a sort of a hypothetical chart it's a technique I've come up with, and I like to call it the deep chart. And in the deep chart, we actually have a 0-degree Sagittarius moon. And that particular moon, right, it's the beginning of Sag. You think about the wheel of the zodiac. So you got Scorpio and then Sagittarius. The sign of Scorpio is a social sign in a sense because, it comes after Libra. It's in that realm of relationships with other people. And it has to do with when we've trusted someone, really, and we've trusted our money or our heart or our body or what have you, to another person, and perhaps there was a betrayal of some kind, or we just realized that relationships are not going to last forever. At least one of us is going to die. And I'm not talking about soulmates, the big picture, but, in this life. So Scorpio has this very aware quality to it, whereas Cancer is much more unconscious. And I think of Scorpio as being quite a bit it's like I remember the pain that came from losing someone, and so I don't want that to happen again. So when you have the moon then move into 0 degrees of Sagittarius, it's kind of like, okay, let's look back at this year and let's reflect for a moment, because I believe the deep chart, we had like a 0 degree mutable deep chart at the beginning of the year. So anyway, what is it that you believed at the beginning of the year that you were going to be able to accomplish by now? Like, what did you expect July to sort of look like for you? And does it look like what you were hoping for, what you were, aiming for? Moon in Capricorn's popping in as an element here of feeling, it's like dissatisfied, but also willing to work hard to fix things, So it doesn't feel to me like we are, it doesn't feel like a sad or depressing moon per se. I've had a lot of people, I just read different astrological takes on this full moon, and I don't necessarily agree with some of the takes. So I believe this has to do with uncovering the beauty and the truth that has to do with taking care of other people from a moral and ethical perspective. Jupiter and Sagittarius, and also truth, ethics. What is it in your life that you're willing to sort of to risk? What are you willing to take a chance on? Okay, that's Sagittarius energy. And at the same time, we've got Sagittarius, we have this moon, of course, in the sign of Sag, in the deep chart. And in the deep chart, Jupiter, the ruler of Sag, Jupiter is in Libra. So this is relationships. What is it you tell yourself about your relationships with people that aren't necessarily true? And a lot in the deep chart, you have Venus conjunct Saturn, exactly 22 degrees of Scorpio. That's one of the most intense degrees of all of the 360 degrees of the zodiac, okay? So it's kill or be killed, is what we call this. And I will say anecdotally from researching charts, whenever there's something at 22, it's always like you really notice that part of the person's personality. So we have not only Venus and Saturn together, so it's sort of like the part of you that socially interacts with others, like how you learn to behave, and then Saturn, kind of like the father, or it's the rules. There's an element here of working on improving your relationship to pleasure, self-discipline, disciplining yourself to recognize when you have imbibed in things that are enjoyable, but that maybe aren't so great for you on a deeper soul level, or maybe they cause suffering to others, or maybe, partying, or sleeping around, or things that I'm not the moral judge. I'm just saying whatever for you is pulling you away from your truth. Now, if you're someone who's like truly a practitioner of like sexual yoga or something, and you have multiple partners and it's like a spiritual part of the journey you're on, or what have you, that's cool. Do your thing. But there may be an element here of weeding out, sort of being discerning and weeding out people in your love life that just aren't really pulling their weight, okay? And I also would say Venus conjunct Saturn in the 8th house could be also time where there's gender conflicts, or there are secrets that come kind of out to the surface that people didn't know about, maybe even as of the last couple of days. There might be secret relationships. Again, young women with older men. It's also really possible. It's been a very popular theme lately. And we have an exact square to Chiron in the deep chart. Okay, an exact square to Chiron in Leo. The identity, the ego, the sense of self. 22 degrees. So some fights are possible, as of this past couple of days and a couple of days following this full moon. So I would just say that the sun also is forming an out of sign square, kind of a T-square here, and in fixed signs. So it feels a little bit like stalemate, hurt feelings, healing that needs to happen individually in your relationships. If you're feeling smothered, if you're feeling like things aren't quite right with your relationship, something feels off. If you're with someone just because you don't want to be lonely, this is a really good month to take some time off, honestly, and to just focus on getting a better idea about what it is you really want. Now, that sounds really simplistic and like a cliche, but if you know that, for example, you hate, I always use ice cream, but let's say you hate chocolate ice cream, right? But you're dating someone that's their very favorite kind of ice cream. And so you you know, they get the chocolate ice cream and you just pretend like you like it. That's self-betrayal, right? And that is the opposite of what a moon, in the deep chart that's in Sagittarius, it's the opposite. What's your truth? What is your story? I've been working with a lot of people lately where they are not at all in the realm of sort of practical reality. Now, I'm not saying I'm very imaginative and creative, and I like to pretend and imagine things all the time, but I know sort of like real world versus my imagination. So I think figuring out for yourself by detaching from distractions is a really good use of this month. And the other thing to make note of is Neptune in the deep chart is at 24 degrees of Capricorn in the 10th house, and that's where this moon is. So it's like a lack of even perhaps discipline, a lack of, or I really honestly feel like this is one where you see it in politics, you're seeing it on the news, but men in the past where they haven't shown up, like, they haven't shown up in a way that has been the highest expression of manhood, and it's cultural right now, obviously something that we're all experiencing together. So I do think that this is going to tie into a lot of people's childhoods, things that happened when they were little babies. It's going to tie into their own personal responsibility in their life towards, like in their relationships, the responsibility that they need to take for the people that they've chosen to date or start a business with, or a job that you have, all those things that have to do with, is this my truth? Do I feel like this is in alignment with what I really, really am passionate about and what I really love? And do you even know what you really love, right? So if you have a strong 12th house, a lot of times people with strong 12th houses, it's easier for them to, other people enjoy, or to find themselves attracted to stronger, sort of even narcissistic personality types, to figure themselves out, because it gives them a job to do. But I feel like the big challenge with North Node in Cancer is no one else can heal you. No one else is going to be able to ever feel the emotions you feel, and so you're the one who's responsible at the end of the day for making yourself feel happy, to feel secure, to feel like you belong here, to know yourself. No one else can know you but you. And people who know themselves are the ones who, like really knowing yourself, and not from a place of an old story that you learned growing up in your family of origin, okay? But really separating yourself from relationship for the month of July, if possible. If you're married, that's hard, but okay. Taking some time to do self-reflective work. I named this full moon, Every Rose Has a Thorn. And I had a sense when I was looking at it that we would get to July and it would still feel like a lot of unfinished business from the first half of the year, which is exactly what a lot of people have been sort of talking about. So the thorn being something that, you yourself are aware of. I know there's things this year that I've done where I'm like, okay, I need to change some of my goals. I need to set some simple, just day-to-day particular, like personal goals for myself or what have you, to kind of get back on track. So readjustment, reevaluate the direction you're headed in this year. That's huge. Let's talk a little more, though, about, I'm going to kind of break this down we're going to look at the deep charts. Remember, don't get confused. This isn't the regular tropical chart of this full moon. This is the deep chart. In the regular tropical chart, though, we do have quite a bit of Leo. We've got our Mercury, of course, which is retrograde, right at 1 of Leo. Mars is also in Leo. And then we have Venus at 16 of Cancer. Venus is right there, conjunct the North Node. Sun and Venus sort of sandwiching the North Node, the direction we're headed in, moving towards a sign that has to do with the very personal inner world. Your inner world, ruled by a moon, which is its opposite, it's the full moon. Moon in Capricorn, which is then ruled by Saturn in Capricorn. What have you been afraid of in the past? What has stopped you? Instead of finding someone else to lay blame on. If you're sad about something right now, if you're frustrated, if you're worried or scared or anxious, if you can't at all, it's possible for you to step aside, remove yourself from the personal subjective place of emotion, if possible, maybe with a friend having a conversation, but then really taking some personal inventory on yourself. Go on Pinterest, there's lots of, just type in personal inventory, there's lots of different little worksheets and stuff. And or if you already know, do some journaling, like make some goals for yourself for this next, even just the month, just do month to month. And in particular, when it comes to being authentic about what you're wanting, all right? Okay, I'm gonna give an example. I just went on a boat ride with some friends this weekend. And on the ride, different people were playing music, right? And I love music, but I like the music I like. And I just didn't like the music that was being played, and it wasn't a big deal. I didn't care. I had my headphones. I had my phones. I just put my own music in my own ears, right? And some people would feel really uncomfortable doing that because they would feel like that was socially, like it might offend someone or what have you. And that's the big thing that we all need to sort of get over, okay? First of all, someone being offended because another person has different musical taste is dumb. That's not my problem. That's like, how old are you? So, and secondly, if I was just annoyed or irritated or like kind of just distracted by the fact that I didn't like the music playing and I was just in a bitchy mood, but I didn't say anything because I was trying to be socially, like, which is better? I would rather be authentic and honest and real. I didn't have to say anything. I just am like, hanging out with friends, just put my own music in, right? So that requires bravery, courage, and you need to know yourself to even know that you don't really like the music that's playing or to have a solution, okay? It's kind of maybe a dumb example. But that is very much what this full moon has to do with. Moon in Capricorn would have been times when if you've blamed other people for your own initial decisions, if you're in a relationship where no one's perfect, and there's always crap you can blame your partner for, whatever. You're not going to learn shit if you do that, right? When you're blaming the other person, even if they're the ones who did it, it's at the end of the day, that's not helpful to your evolution. So instead, figuring out, let's go back to the origination of this and figure out maybe why did maybe you have your partner is entrusted with things that you need to be entrusted with, or maybe you need to just not micromanage them. There's lots of possibilities here, but I feel like the other really important thing to look at in your chart is look at your Pluto. Okay, so both Saturn and Pluto. Saturn as a planet, before we had telescopes, it's the planet, you can see it actually tonight. You'll be able to see it if you go outside. It'll be, if you're looking at the moon, it's kind of to the right. It'll be like to the right of the moon, basically. Little tiny, like a little star. I think it's below it a little bit too, the declination, if I remember correctly. So, what was my point? Oh my gosh, sometimes I lose my track. I lose my train of thought. I forget what I was going at there with Saturn. Shoot. Oh, yes, I remember. Sorry. Okay. So in the olden days, Saturn was the wanderer, was the planet that was the furthest. It was the outer bounds of our solar system, of our understanding of our solar system, before we knew about Uranus and Neptune, Pluto, etc. Okay, so because of that, Saturn represents, and also I believe the amount of time it takes Saturn to kind of make its way around in a person's life. Saturn is this reminder. It's almost like the Grim Reaper, that your time is numbered. It's a linear archetype. There's an ending. There's rules with consequences. There's, if you build a building with a faulty foundation, it's going to crumble and fall. We need Saturn. We need rigidity. We need things that are going to stay, like a stone building or something. The ruins in Rome, all those things feel very Saturnian to me. And as a personal, thinking of this planet from a personal perspective, Saturn's going to show in a past incarnation where you kind of had hardship, where you had sadness, or you had scarcity or lack, or you had to face something that was outside of your home and your family. So like whether it was your job, your career, the community you lived in, and there was. It makes me think of someone who had to bite the bullet and do what you had to do for you and your family to survive. Okay, so Saturn has that quality. It's really tied and attached to the mortal life. Whereas Pluto takes about 3 human lifetimes to orbit the sun, right? And it's weird, funky, kind of elliptical orbit, but it has this, I mean, if you believe in reincarnation, and you could have been alive, obviously. If you're alive in the 20th century, you may have been alive when Pluto was obviously on its same trip, but it still hadn't gotten back home where it started from. So, the point is, Pluto is like your much more epic, karmic, wounding, emotional wounding. You're much more sort of repeated, long-term cycles. These things your soul's really trying to learn and to master. Okay, so it's kind of like Saturn in a sense, because it has to do with these conditions that you were kind of born into. Saturn is the physical world and the rules and the laws of the land. Pluto, on the other hand, is mortality straight up. Saturn is too, to a certain extent, but Pluto's like death and rebirth. It's soul-based. The fact that your soul has continuity. Okay, so if you kind of think of Pluto as this planet that does represent the continuity of the soul, and then Saturn is going to represent, just in this incarnation, duties and obligations and karmic kind of contracts you have, right? So having them together in Capricorn very much to me feels like, as a collective, we're just dealing with the patriarchy. And a really cool thing, I hope for those of you who are still listening, during the late 1600s, all right, this is the end of the 17th century, and around 1692, that's like when you have the Salem witch trial, all that good stuff. But you had the Inquisition, you had the Crusades and all that sort of thing during the few hundred years around that time, that window. And even before then. But point is, I feel like the focus on, well, actually, let me hold that thought. I'm looking at the chart here, and I'm like, well, but I don't really want to go into that. Okay, I'm gonna pause right here. And then on this next part, I'm going to go into a bit more detail about what I was just about to mention. So just come back, and I'll be here.